You are standing in line at a coffee shop, phone already in your hand, before you even realize you picked it up. 30 seconds pass, you refresh an app you just checked. Nothing has changed, but you check it anyway. That flicker of restlessness, that small itch under your skin, is boredom. It feels ordinary, it feels like a minor annoyance built into modern life. But boredom, in the way you experience it today, is strange. It is new, and your brain was never designed to handle it the way you're asking it to right now. For most of human history, there was no such thing as empty time. Your ancestors spent their days tracking animals, reading weather, remembering which plants were safe and which were not. Their attention was constantly pulled outward toward real threats and real rewards. A rustle in the grass mattered, a shift in wind mattered, there was no scrolling. No scrolling substitute, no gap in the day, large enough to notice as boredom. Time was full because survival demanded it be full. So where did this feeling come from? Psychologists describe boredom as a signal, not a flaw. It is your brain telling you that your current environment is not giving it enough meaningful stimulation. Dr. John Eastwood, a psychologist at York University who has spent years studying this exact feeling, defines boredom as the uncomfortable wanting of a satisfying activity paired with an inability to engage in one. Notice that definition carefully. Boredom is not about having nothing to do, it is about wanting engagement and not finding it. That distinction matters because it means boredom is not laziness, it is a kind of hunger. Think about hunger for food. Your body evolved a signal to tell you when you need calories, because for most of your evolutionary past, calories were scarce and hard to get. Boredom appears to work the same way, except the missing resource is not food, it is stimulation, novelty, and purpose. Your ancestors rarely needed a signal for this because their world provided it constantly. You, on the other hand, live in an environment engineered to either overwhelm that hunger with cheap stimulation or leave it completely unmet in quiet, structured, repetitive spaces like a waiting room, a commute, or a meeting that could have been an email. Here's where the story gets more interesting. Some researchers argue that boredom itself may not be ancient at all, at least not in its modern form. Historian Peter Toohey, who has traced descriptions of boredom through literature, found that clear complaints about the feeling barely existed before industrialization. People described fatigue, melancholy, or restlessness, but not the specific familiar ache of "there is nothing worth doing right now." That version of boredom seems tied to a very particular kind of life, a life with fixed schedules, a life with repetitive tasks, stripped of variety. A life where your body is still but your mind is left with nothing to chew on before industrial routines. Most days were shaped by nature, not by clocks. Work varied by season, by weather, by need. A farmer's morning did not look like a factory worker's shift, repeated identically hour after hour. When humans began working in structured, repetitive environments, an unexpected side effect emerged. Minds built for constant novelty were suddenly asked to sit still and do the same motion over and over. For hours, boredom as a distinct, nameable discomfort seems to have crystallized around exactly that mismatch. Your brain did not evolve to sit quietly and do nothing, it evolved to notice things, it evolved to search. Neuroscientists have found that even when you appear to be doing nothing, your brain is not actually idle. A network known as the default mode network activates during unstructured moments, wandering across memories, plans, and imagined scenarios. In other words, when you feel bored, your brain is not shutting down. It is searching for something to latch onto, and when nothing external offers itself, it starts generating its own material. That is why boredom often triggers daydreaming or sudden, unrelated ideas, or a nagging urge to check your phone even though you know nothing new is there. And this is where the modern world quietly rewired the equation. Your ancestors' boredom, if you can even call it that, would have been rare and short-lived, quickly resolved by the next demand of daily survival. Your boredom is chronic because you live inside a landscape almost perfectly designed to remove effortful engagement. Streaming platforms queue up the next episode before you finish the current one. Apps refresh themselves with new content every few seconds. Passive entertainment has become so effortless that your brain rarely needs to generate its own stimulation anymore. And that changes something important. Some researchers suggest that when you constantly outsource stimulation to a screen, your tolerance for internally generated engagement shrinks. Silence starts to feel unbearable, not because silence is dangerous, but because your mind has grown used to being fed instead of searching for itself. This creates a quiet paradox. The device in your hand promises to relieve boredom instantly, and it does, for for a few seconds. But some studies suggest that habitual phone checking during boring moments may actually deepen your sensitivity to boredom over time, training your brain to expect constant novelty and making ordinary stillness feel more uncomfortable than it once did. The cure becomes part of what strengthens the itch. There is also a strange psychological finding buried in decades of boredom research. Many people, given the choice between sitting quietly with their own thoughts or receiving a mild electric shock, chose the shock. That result from a well-known study led by psychologist Timothy Wilson surprised even the researchers who ran it. It suggests that unstructured stillness can feel so uncomfortable that some people would rather introduce discomfort of a different kind than sit inside their own unoccupied mind. Boredom, in that light, is not a small nuisance. It is a pressure your brain treats as something to escape, almost at any cost. But boredom is not purely negative. Several researchers have pointed out that boredom can act as a kind of creative pressure. When your brain is denied easy stimulation, it sometimes turns inward and produces original thought. Studies on creativity have found that participants who completed a dull, repetitive task before a creative exercise often generated more inventive ideas afterward than those who went straight into the task. Boredom in small doses may nudge your mind toward exploration instead of habit. It pushes you to imagine, plan, and wonder precisely because nothing external is doing that work for you. So the discomfort you feel standing in that coffee line is not a personal failing, and it is not simply modern impatience. It is an old survival instinct, tuned for a world of constant sensory engagement, now trying to make sense of a world engineered for passive consumption. Your ancestors rarely had to face true stillness, so their minds never needed strong defenses against it. You face stillness constantly, and your mind, inherited largely unchanged from theirs, reacts the only way it knows how. It searches, it reaches, it grows uncomfortable when nothing answers back. Maybe the question is not how to eliminate boredom, but how to listen to it differently. That flicker under your skin might not be something to silence with another swipe or another refresh. It might be your ancient searching mind still hunting for meaning in a landscape that no longer requires you to hunt for anything at all. So the next time you feel that familiar itch while waiting in line, remember what it actually is. Not a glitch, not weakness, just an old and patient instinct still waiting for a world that gives it something worth finding.